I was looking forward to Sunday dinner at my parents' house. It had been a while, and I was excited to share news about my new freelance project. The familiar smell of pot roast filled the air as I pulled into the driveway, noticing Jackson's SUV already parked. Inside, my brother, his wife Natalie, and their kids were already seated, everyone laughing. My parents exchanged glances when I walked in, Dad clearing his throat to announce they had important news to share after dinner. Something in his tone made my stomach tighten. Before I continue my story, let me know where you are watching from and hit that subscribe button so you do not miss what happens next in this wild journey. My name is Ignacio, 32 years old, a Hispanic American making my way as a freelance photographer and writer. My parents, Calvin and Diane, built a successful construction company from scratch after immigrating to America in their 20s. My father worked his way up from being a laborer to owning multiple development sites across the state. My mother managed the books and client relations. They were the perfect business duo, hardworking and determined. My older brother Jackson, 38, followed perfectly in their footsteps. He married Natalie, had two perfect kids, and became the heir apparent to the family business. Growing up, there was always an unspoken comparison between us. Jackson was the responsible one, the one who understood the value of practical decisions. I was the dreamer, the one who needed to get his head out of the clouds. Family dinners often turned into showcases of Jackson's achievements, while my interests were treated as phases to outgrow. Art was my passion from an early age. I would sketch buildings instead of learning how to build them. I took photographs of construction sites rather than working on them. My room was filled with journals of poetry and short stories, while Jackson displayed trophies from business competitions. When Jackson brought home perfect report cards with As in economics and business studies, my parents would beam with pride. When I won a regional photography contest in high school, my father asked when I was going to focus on something that could pay the bills. College was supposed to be my chance to prove myself. I enrolled in business administration to please my parents, but also took creative writing and photography classes on the side. 2 years in, I was miserable in my business courses, but thriving in my creative ones. A professor encouraged me to submit my portfolio to a prestigious art program. When I was accepted, I made the decision to leave business school behind. My parents were furious. My father called it throwing away my future. My mother cried about wasted potential and money. Jackson, of course, graduated with honors in business management and immediately joined the family company. He was given a management position right away, while I struggled to build a portfolio and find steady work as a freelancer. There were months of ramen noodles and late rent payments times when I questioned my choices. But slowly I began to build a reputation. Small magazines published my photo essays. A local gallery featured my work. I started getting regular gigs, documenting events, and creating content for small businesses. My income was modest compared to Jackson's executive salary, but I was proud of building something on my own terms. My apartment was small, but filled with books, cameras, and the freedom to create. Every success felt earned, not handed to me. My parents never quite understood this. During holiday gatherings, they would still ask when I was going to get a real job, as if my creative work was just a hobby. The last few years had been better, though. I had established enough regular clients to maintain a stable income. My photography style had developed a recognizable signature that clients specifically sought out. I had even begun mentoring younger artists and teaching workshops at community centers. Most importantly, I had found peace with my choice, even if my family had not. Recently, I had been making efforts to bridge the gap with my parents. I called more often, sent them prints of my best work, and tried to take genuine interest in the family business discussions during gatherings. I thought I detected a softening in their attitude, small moments of pride when I mentioned a new client or publication. When my mother called unexpectedly to invite me to a special family dinner, I felt hopeful. Maybe they were finally seeing my path as valid. Maybe we could finally have a relationship based on acceptance rather than disappointment. That Sunday morning, I spent extra time selecting a gift for them, a framed print of the skyline where my father had built his first major project. I also prepared a small portfolio showing my recent work for an upcoming feature in a major magazine. This was my biggest opportunity yet, and surely they would see this as a sign of success. I rehearsed how I would tell them about it, imagining their surprised approval. When I arrived at their suburban home, something felt off immediately. Jackson's car was in the driveway, and I could see his family already inside through the large bay windows. Usually, I was the first to arrive, with Jackson making a fashionably late entrance after some important business meeting. Today, everyone was seated in the living room, talking in hushed tones that stopped abruptly when I knocked. My mother opened the door with a tight smile that did not reach her eyes. She hugged me briefly, then hurried back to the kitchen. My father nodded from his recliner but did not get up. Jackson sat on the couch, his arm around Natalie, their kids, playing with tablets on the floor. There was a formality to the scene that felt staged. Throughout appetizers, the conversation flowed unnaturally. My parents lavished attention on Jackson's children, asking about their school achievements and sports activities. Jackson dominated the discussion with stories about new contracts and business expansions. When I tried to mention my magazine feature, my mother interrupted to ask if anyone needed more drinks. From the corner of my eye, I noticed a stack of papers on my father's desk in the adjacent study. The top sheet had the letterhead of Williams & Sons, the family lawyer. I caught my parents exchanging glances several times, my father nodding slightly as if confirming something. During dinner, my mother served Jackson the largest portion of roast and the first slice of pie. My father asked detailed questions about Jackson's latest business deals. When I finally managed to mention my magazine feature, my father nodded distractedly and immediately turned back to Jackson with questions about the company's quarterly projections. After dinner, my father stood up and tapped his glass with a spoon. The room fell silent as he cleared his throat. There was something ceremonial in his posture that made me grip my chair tighter. "Your mother and I have been thinking about our legacy," he began, his voice carrying that authoritative tone he used in business meetings. "We are not getting any younger, and it is time we put our affairs in order. We have updated our will with some important changes we wanted to share with all of you today." My mother walked to his side, placing her hand on his shoulder in a show of unity. Her face wore an expression of rehearsed solemnity, but I noticed a slight tremor in her fingers. My father continued, "We have decided that upon our passing, the house, the business, and all our assets will go to Jackson and his children." He took a breath, then added with deliberate emphasis, "Ignacio will not be included in the inheritance." The room seemed to tilt sideways. I heard Natalie gasp softly while Jackson straightened his back, his face unreadable. My glass froze halfway to my lips as I struggled to process what I had just heard. Completely cut out. Not just given a smaller share or specific items. Completely excluded. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Jackson cleared his throat and said, "Dad, are you sure?" His tone conveyed surprise, but the quick glance he shot me held something else. Satisfaction. My father nodded firmly. "We are absolutely certain." This decision was not made lightly. I finally found my voice. "Why?" It came out as a whisper, though I had meant to sound stronger. My mother stepped forward then, her eyes meeting mine directly for the first time that evening. Her gaze was cold, clinical, as if she was examining a stranger. "We are not wasting our legacy on someone who never built anything." She said each word precise and measured. "This company, this family, was built on hard work and practical decisions, not dreams and pretty pictures." Her words hit like physical blows. Not the rejection itself, which somehow did not surprise me as much as it should have, but the naked disdain in her voice. This was not a recent decision. This was years of disappointment crystallized into action. My father scoffed, adding his own twist of the knife. "You have always been the outsider, Ignacio. Might as well make it official." Jackson remained silent, but his expression spoke volumes. This was not news to him. He had known. Perhaps he had even suggested it. "This is a business decision," my father continued, his tone softening slightly as if that would cushion the blow. "The company needs stable leadership that understands its value. Jackson has proven himself. He has the right mindset." I felt dizzy, disconnected from my body. Years of small rejections had prepared me for this moment, yet the finality of it still stunned me. Not just cut out of the will, but cut out of the family narrative completely. My father raised his glass, Then his face brightening as he turned toward my brother. To the real future of this family, he declared. Jackson beamed, raising his own glass, while Natalie nodded approvingly beside him. No one looked at me. No one acknowledged the bomb they had just dropped in my lap. No one seemed to care that they had just officially declared me worthless to the family legacy. Then my mother spoke again, her voice taking on that familiar lecturing tone she had used throughout my childhood. Perhaps if you had made different choices, things would be different. But you chose your path, Ignacio. All those years wasting time on photographs and stories instead of learning the business. The reality is, my father interjected, we built something meant to last generations, something solid. Your lifestyle is too unstable, too impractical. What would you even do with a construction company? Turn it into an art gallery. The contempt in his voice was unmistakable. I tried to speak to defend myself, but Jackson interrupted. Let us be honest here, he said, finally joining the conversation. I have put in the work. I have shown up every day for 15 years. I have expanded the business while you were taking pictures of sunsets. I deserve this. His wife nodded vigorously beside him. Jackson sacrificed a lot for this family, she added. He missed vacations, worked weekends. His children barely saw him some weeks because he was so dedicated. It was surreal sitting there while my family justified erasing me from their legacy. Each comment revealed how they truly saw me, how little they valued my choices and my life. What about my sacrifices, I finally asked. What about building my own career from nothing with no support? Do you have any idea how hard that was? My father waved his hand dismissively. Playing with cameras is not building something real. Real buildings. Real jobs. Real security. My mother nodded. When your brother has children in college and retirement to plan for, what do you have to show for all these years? The conversation devolved from there, with each family member piling on reasons why Jackson deserved everything and I deserved nothing. I sat silently, feeling strangely calm as the truth of my place in this family crystallized before me. They had never seen me. They had never tried to understand me. They had measured me against a yardstick I never agreed to use. The noise around me seemed to fade as clarity washed over me. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. The table fell silent, all eyes turning to me with expressions ranging from defiance to discomfort. I looked at each of them in turn, ending with my parents. Then, with a calmness that surprised even me, I smiled coldly and said, "Thanks for finally showing me where I stand. You will remember this moment. I promise." I picked up my jacket, left the untouched portfolio on the table, and walked out without looking back. Behind me, I heard my mother call my name, but I closed the door on whatever justification she was about to offer. In my car, I sat with my hands gripping the steering wheel, my knuckles white. I did not cry. I did not scream. Something inside me had fundamentally shifted. The last thread of hope that my family would ever truly see me had been severed. But in its place, something new was forming. A resolve, a promise to myself. As I drove away from my childhood home, I made a decision. If they wanted to write me out of the family story, I would write my own, and it would be one they could not ignore. The weeks after that Sunday dinner were some of the darkest of my life. I moved through my days in a fog, barely able to focus on assignments or deadlines. At night, I would lie awake, replaying the scene, hearing my mother's cold assessment of my life's work, seeing my father's dismissive wave. The casual cruelty of it kept hitting me in waves, each realization more painful than the last. My phone filled with missed calls and messages. My mother sent texts asking if I was okay, as if she had not just participated in my emotional execution. My father left gruff voicemails saying we needed to talk like adults, that I was overreacting. Jackson called once, leaving a message that was half apology, half justification. None of them actually acknowledged what they had done or how deeply they had hurt me. Through mutual friends, I learned that the will change had not been a sudden decision. Jackson had been pushing for it for over a year, gradually convincing my parents that I was too unreliable to entrust with any part of the family wealth. He had painted me as irresponsible while carefully cultivating his image as the dedicated son. The Sunday dinner had not been an announcement, but a coronation with me, invited only to witness my official removal. After 2 weeks of emotional paralysis, I made a decision. I blocked their numbers and email addresses. I removed them from my social media. I needed space to process what had happened without their constant attempts to normalize their betrayal. Without the background noise of their expectations and judgments, I could finally hear myself think. For days I wallowed in self-pity, questioning my life choices. Was I really the failure they saw me as? Had I wasted my talents on frivolous pursuits? The old insecurities rose up like ghosts, whispering familiar doubts. Then one morning I woke up angry instead of sad. Not the hot, explosive anger that burns out quickly, but a cool, focused determination. I had allowed their definition of success to haunt me for too long. I had sought their approval even while claiming independence. It was time to truly break free. I made an appointment with a financial advisor, bringing my portfolio client list and project ideas. She reviewed my work with professional interest, asking questions about my business model and goals. Unlike my family, she saw my creative work as a legitimate career with growth potential. We spent hours discussing diversification, scalability, and investment strategies. By the end of our meeting, I had a 5-year plan that excited me. I would expand beyond freelance work into creating a multimedia production company. I would leverage my photography skills and writing connections to build something larger than myself, not to prove anything to my family, but because I saw the potential in myself that they had missed. With renewed focus, I threw myself into work. I completed the magazine feature that had been interrupted by the family drama, producing my best work yet. The editor was so impressed she recommended me for other projects within the publishing group. I used the exposure to connect with other creatives, building a network of talented people who respected my vision. I took business classes at night, learning the practical skills I had once rejected. Not because my father was right, but because knowledge is power. I studied marketing, contract negotiation, and business formation. Each new skill became a tool in building my future, one that was entirely mine. My apartment became command central for my growing ambitions. One wall covered in project timelines and vision boards. My computer filled with business plans and potential collaborations. I worked 16-hour days, fueled by a determination that had been dormant for too long. The magazine feature led to a book offer from a boutique publisher specializing in visual storytelling. I proposed a series exploring American identity through portraits and personal narratives. The advance was modest, but the opportunity was priceless. I traveled across the country, photographing people from all walks of life and recording their stories. Each subject taught me something new about resilience and authenticity. Between book research trips, I established a small studio space where I could meet clients and conduct shoots. I hired an assistant, then another. I brought in a web designer to create a professional online presence. Slowly, I was building a legitimate business, one client and one project at a time. The book was published to positive reviews, opening doors to speaking engagements and workshops. I was invited to judge photography competitions and mentor emerging artists. My income grew steadily, allowing me to reinvest in better equipment and expanded studio space. At a photography conference in Chicago, I met Amanda, a marketing executive who specialized in creative businesses. She approached me after my presentation, full of ideas about how my visual storytelling could be applied to brand narratives. Her energy and vision were infectious. We stayed up all night in the hotel lobby, mapping out potential collaborations on napkins. Amanda became first my business consultant, then my partner in a joint venture, and eventually much more. She saw my work with fresh eyes, unclouded by family history or preconceptions. She pushed me to think bigger, to see the commercial potential in my artistic vision without compromising its integrity. With her marketing expertise complementing my creative skills, we created packages for corporate clients seeking authentic visual content. Our partnership thrived because we shared fundamental values while bringing different strengths to the table. Amanda believed in my talent with a fierceness that helped me believe in it too. She never treated my photography as a hobby or a phase, but as the foundation of something significant. 3 years passed without contact with my family. I heard updates through mutual acquaintances, brief mentions that I acknowledged without follow-up questions. I was building my own life, one that did not orbit around their approval or disapproval. Then came the news that changed everything. A former employee of my father's company reached out knowing my family connection. The business was in trouble, serious trouble. Jackson's management had led to a series of poor investments and failed projects. The company that had been my father's pride was facing possible bankruptcy. My first instinct was to feel a vindictive satisfaction. Let them fail. Let them see how the golden child had squandered their precious legacy. But that initial reaction gave way to something more complex. That company represented decades of my parents' hard work, regardless of how they had treated me. And despite everything, some part of me still cared. I began researching discreetly, using industry contacts to gather information about the company's situation. The picture was worse than I had initially heard. Jackson had expanded too aggressively, taking on projects beyond the company's expertise. He had leveraged company assets for personal investments that had gone south. My father, now semi-retired, had lost control of the business he had built. The situation presented an unexpected opportunity. Through Amanda's network, I connected with investors looking to acquire distressed assets in the construction industry. With my insider knowledge and their capital, we could potentially acquire a controlling interest in the company. Not out of revenge, but because I genuinely believed I could save what my parents had built, even if they thought me incapable. The process was complex and required absolute discretion. For months, I worked with lawyers and financial analysts, structuring a deal that would make business sense while giving me the control I needed. Amanda was my rock throughout, challenging my motives when necessary but supporting my vision. When everything was in place, I arranged a meeting with the potential investors at an upscale restaurant downtown. I made sure the time and location would be convenient for my father and brother, who were desperately seeking new financing. What I did not tell them was who would be joining the meeting. I arrived early, selecting a table with a view of the entrance. Amanda sat beside me, squeezing my hand under the table as we waited. When my father and Jackson walked in, their expressions shifted from professional optimism to shock. Jackson froze mid-step. My father's face drained of color. For a moment, no one spoke. 3 years of silence stretched between us like an unbridgeable chasm. Then I stood and extended my hand, not as a son seeking approval, but as a businessman about to change the game. "Welcome," I said calmly. "I believe we have a lot to discuss about the future of Calvin Construction." That meeting marked the beginning of a seismic shift in our family dynamics. My father and Jackson had arrived expecting to court anonymous investors. Instead, they found themselves facing me, the son they had written off now holding the financial lifeline their company desperately needed. I conducted the meeting with professional detachment, outlining the company's precarious position with a precision that made Jackson shift uncomfortably in his seat. The numbers did not lie. Under his leadership, the once thriving family business had accumulated dangerous levels of debt and lost several key clients. The terms of my investment group's offer were straightforward. We would provide the capital needed to stabilize the company in exchange for 51% ownership and management restructuring. I would take over as CEO with Amanda joining as Chief Strategy Officer. Jackson would remain, but in a reduced capacity, focusing solely on client relations. My father could retain his Chairman Emeritus title, but operational decisions would rest with the new management team. As the reality of the situation sank in my father's face, cycled through disbelief, anger, and finally a grudging respect, Jackson alternated between defensive justifications and stunned silence. They had no choice but to accept. The alternative was bankruptcy and the complete loss of the family legacy. When the meeting concluded, my mother was waiting outside in their car. Seeing me emerge from the restaurant, she rushed forward, tears streaming down her face. "Please talk to us," she pleaded, reaching for my arm. "We have missed you so much. We made a terrible mistake." My father stood awkwardly behind her, pride warring with necessity. "Son," he began, his voice rougher than I remembered. "What you did in there, that was impressive. You showed real business sense. Maybe we underestimated you." I maintained my composure, neither rejecting their overtures nor embracing them. 3 years ago, you made it clear where I stood in this family, I replied evenly. Today, I showed you where I stand in this industry. We can discuss personal matters once the business transition is complete. The following weeks were a whirlwind of legal paperwork, staff meetings, and strategic planning. I approached the company rescue with the same creativity and determination I had applied to building my own business. Amanda proved invaluable, bringing fresh perspectives and innovative solutions to long-standing problems. Slowly, the company began to stabilize. We secured new financing, renegotiated troubled contracts, and implemented modern project management systems. Employees who had feared for their jobs found new energy under leadership that valued both tradition and innovation. Jackson struggled with his diminished role initially, his resentment barely concealed during management meetings. But as the company's situation improved, he gradually came to recognize the value of my approach. One evening, after a particularly successful client presentation, he awkwardly acknowledged that my creative background brought something valuable to the business. My parents' adjustment was more complicated. My father vacillated between pride in the company's recovery and discomfort with his reduced influence. My mother made tentative efforts to rebuild our relationship, inviting me to dinners I sometimes accepted, sometimes declined. They were learning painfully that access to my life was no longer their right but my choice. The family business became profitable again under my leadership, but more importantly, it evolved. We expanded into sustainable building practices and innovative design areas that merged my creative vision with practical construction expertise. The company that had once been used to invalidate my life choices became proof of their value. Amanda and I married in a small ceremony on the rooftop of our new office building. My family attended, sitting quietly among friends and colleagues who had supported me when they had not. During his toast, my father publicly acknowledged his misjudgment and apologized for undervaluing my path. It was not a magical healing moment, but it was a start. I never sought revenge for what they did, only recognition and respect. The greatest victory was not taking over the company or proving my worth to my family. It was discovering my own value separate from their validation. I built something uniquely mine, then used that strength to save something important to them. Not because I needed their approval, but because I had outgrown needing it. Today, the relationship with my family continues to evolve. There are still awkward moments and old patterns that emerge during stress. The hurt of that Sunday dinner has not disappeared entirely, but we have found a new way forward, one based on mutual respect rather than inherited expectations. The most profound lesson I learned through this journey was that true success is not measured by others' standards, but by alignment with your own values and vision. My parents thought they were punishing me by cutting me out of their will. Instead, they freed me to fully become myself. For anyone facing rejection from those who should support you most, remember that your worth is not determined by their ability to see it. The very qualities they dismiss might become your greatest strengths. Build your life on your own terms. Success is the best response to those who doubted you. Have you ever had to prove your worth to family members who dismissed your choices? Comment below with your experience and how you handled it. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life journeys of overcoming family challenges. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that their path is valid, even when others cannot see it. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes being written out of someone else's story is the beginning of writing your own.